Okay, we're talking about three-point targeting with quiet eye, and that's probably one of the most important tools we have to offer here at the training center is this targeting tool that really seems to really make dramatic changes in your game without much practice. And I think it's the closest thing we have to a magic bullet, although there's no magic bullets in this game. You have to work at it and develop your game. But this is pretty close to a magic bullet. So let's see what it's all about. Here's a 220 average player. These are some CATS reports like the one you did this morning. Here's a 220 average bowler who's got one CAT indicator at the pro level, and he's got some up here at the 160 level and some in between. And as soon as he learned the three-point targeting system, his CATS report went from there to 4 out of 6 at the pro level without any practice, just boom, right away. No learning curve or anything, just right into it. Here's a 227 average junior gold player who's got 3 at the pro level, but he's got 1 up here at the 140 level and a couple below his average at 200, 209. And he learned the targeting system in quiet eye, and after that, 5 out of 6 at the pro level. So those examples are pretty much typical. You know, those weight loss commercials, they say you lose 110 pounds on this diet, and in the bottom it says in fine print, but these aren't typical results. These are typical results. So that's why I say this is such a good tool. Here's another bowler, 220 average before. He had 2 at the pro level, but 2 at the 140, 150 range up there. You see that. And afterwards, everything was above 200 after learning the targeting system. So what is this system that I think is so magical? It was developed by Joe Slowinski in part, Neil Stremmel from USBC, and Mo Pinnell. They all put information into this to make it happen. It's an exit point. We talked about that this morning. The exit point is the end of the oil pattern, and where the ball leaves that end of the oil onto the dry lane where friction begins. It's a focal point. In this case, the focal point is part of a bowling pin on the lane. And for a right-handed bowler, the only pins you'll need are the 3, 6, and the 10. For a left-hander, it would be the 2, 4, and the 7. So just those 3 pins you're going to be looking at as focal points on the lane. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it's the issue of quiet eye, which came from the University of Quebec Sports Science Department, who did research on how elite athletes in all kinds of sports target and how they use their eyes when they play their sport. Okay? So, first of all, this exit point formula is what gives you the most margin of error. It's PL minus 31. PL stands for pattern length. So if you know what the pattern length is, you subtract the number 31, which stays constant all the time, from the pattern length, and that's where the ball is supposed to be at the end of the oil. So for example, on a 40-foot pattern, 40 minus 31 is 9. And board 9 will be where the ball should be at the end of the oil at 40 feet down the lane, or 2/3 of the way down the lane. Okay? So that's where you're going to be throwing the ball toward. Now, if you do that, you'll get the most margin of error, the last 4 words on this graphic here. And that's what everybody's looking for. Room to miss right or miss left and still hit the pocket, still be able to score, still be competitive. All right? And as you see here, the further down the lane the oil goes, the closer your ball has to be to the pocket. There's less room for hook. The ball has to be closer to the pocket because there's not as much friction to get the ball to come back. So short patterns, you need to have the ball out on the edge. Medium patterns, the ball needs to be closer to the pocket. And long patterns, you need to have the ball even closer to the pocket because there's less room to hook because the oil goes down the lane further. Makes sense, right? Here's why it works. This is on a short pattern here, about 35 feet. 35 minus 31 is 4. The 4 board is the center of the 10 pin. You see that? If you come back here to the oil graph, here's the 4 board in the oil graph, and outside the 4 board there's what? A lot less oil. Inside is a lot more oil. So if you throw the ball and miss to the right and there's less oil, that means there's more friction. What's the ball going to do? It's going to hook back, right? So that's where you get the help here. If you miss right, the ball hooks back. If you miss left, there's a lot more oil over here, isn't there? So if you miss left, the ball is going to see more oil and less friction. It's going to stay and hold. That's where you get that most margin for error. You see that? So if you get on the target line, you're in great shape. If you miss to the right, it's going to hook back. If you miss to the left, it's going to stay put and hold its position. And that way you have a chance to strike either way. All right? Same thing is true on a longer pattern. Here's a 43-foot pattern. 43 minus 31 is 12. The 12 board is the outside edge of the 3 pin right here. And down here is board 12. And you see again that same thing. To the right of board 12 is less oil. To the left is more oil. So you get help for the ball to hook back on the right, and you get hold because there's more oil on the left. So playing this area is important. I can play in here and strike, but I have to be perfect to do it. Over here I can play in here and I don't have to be perfect. I can miss right, I can miss left and still strike, or hit my target and still strike. Okay? Now we've determined that the bowling ball is released about 6 boards from the inside of the slide foot. And that's what this graphic is showing you here. That's an important thing too, because we have to determine where we want to slide in order to put the ball down in the right place in the lane to hit the target. Okay? Here's Chris Barnes and Tommy Jones from an actual PBA show where they superimposed their shots on the telecast one on top of the other and played them back during the TV show. They're playing on 35 feet. So 35 minus 31 is 4, right? Tommy's playing with a little more hook. He's playing at 40 degrees of angle. Chris is playing at 20 degrees. Their break points are different, but at 35 feet, their bowling balls are both on board 4. And they both made perfect strikes. So using that formula to get that most margin for error, okay? And you can use that formula no matter how much hook you throw, because as you see with Tommy, he's just playing from a different angle, still to the same location though. You follow me? So here's the precision focal points. For each pin, there's 5 locations: a center, a left edge, a right edge, a bottom left, and a bottom right, where these X's are over here on the 3 pin, the 6 pin, the 10 pin. And you see the center of the 10 pin is the 4 board, center of the 6 pin is the 9 board, center of the 3 pin is between 14 and 15. Okay? So you'll only need these 3 pins to use this targeting system as a right-hand bowler. Okay? So here's another thing about bowling that's interesting. I'm going to have you stare at a circle here, the red circle, for 20 seconds or so, and watch what happens to the black circle around it when you stare at the red circle. When you see it happening, let me know. The black circle should be disappearing a little bit when you look at the red circle and focus on it. Yeah. You see this black circle kind of fading away when you look at the red circle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right there. Look like the red circle got a little bigger though.
And the black circle kind of disappears. That's called Troxlers Effect. It was discovered by this guy, Ignaz Troxler, back in 1804. So it applies to bowling because if you look at a target for a period of time, things in your peripheral vision will fade away. So distractions like people in the crowd, if you're in a tournament, or people walking up on you on the other lanes, that'll fade away as you focus on your target. That's the benefit of this particular effect called Troxler's Effect. Now, we talked about on our catch report that the pros have 3.1 boards down at the break point, don't they, of room, 3.1 boards. So here are 3 boxes, 3.1 boards. Hang on a second. Oops. Three boxes are 3 boards wide. This box is for short patterns. It's out near the edge. And this is the area that you'd hit to play on short. 3 boards wide. And this corresponds to the focal point of the 10 pin. That's what this arrow is pointing toward, is the 10 pin, okay? On medium patterns, this would be the 3 board wide box, the green box. It corresponds to the 6 pin. And the yellow box corresponds to long patterns and corresponds to the 3 pin, okay? So again, the 3, the 6, and the 10 would be the 3 pins you use as focal points. Now I'll explain how this works in just a minute, so bear with me. This just tells, again, the short patterns is the 10 pin for right-handers, the 7 pin for lefties. Medium patterns, the 6 pin for righties, the 4 pin for lefties. And the long patterns, the 3 pin for right-handers, the 2 pin for left-handers. Okay? Now, the first thing you do is choose the exit point using this formula, PL minus 31. So for our pattern, 40 feet minus 31 is board 9. So you find board 9 here and draw a straight line down to the pins. And we saw before that that line down to the pins is going to correspond to the center of the 6 pin. You see it? 9 board right there. So you're going to be looking at the center of the 6 pin as your focal point when we get up and start doing this, okay? That'll be different for different patterns. You just use the formula and subtract the number and then draw that straight line down to the pins to find out what pin you're going to watch. Okay? Then second, you pick that focal point, which is in this case the center of the 6-pin. Then you extend the line back to your visual targets. Do you watch the arrows up here? Is that what you watch? So at the arrows, the 9 board is going to be 1 board outside the second arrow. Okay? And then fourth, you determine the slide point. And we said that you want to slide 6 boards to the left of where you want to lay the ball down. So if we're trying to lay the ball down on board 9, we have to add 6 to that, and that means you're going to slide on board 15 to hit board 9. Okay? That's how it works. Find the baseline by doing the X-point formula. Get the focal point, get the visual target, and you can choose anything for your visual target. It could be the arrows, it could be the dots. It's up to you of what target up front you want to watch. But you watch the arrows already, so that works for you. But it could be something else if that's your preference, okay? Or for those you teach. And then you add 6, not 7. This is an old presentation. You add 6 for the slide point. We used to say 7, now we've reduced this to 6. So it's on your recording here that this has changed now from 7 to 6, all right? And then you adjust for whether you hit the pocket or not and how much you drift on your approach by stepping over. All right, so you need to know your drift in order to slide where you need to hit the target that you want. And most of us drift different amounts when we play the outside edge of the lane versus the middle of the lane versus deep inside. So most of our Weber players, they know 3 numbers. How much they drift on the outside, how much they drift in the middle, and how much they drift inside. Sometimes those numbers are not the same. Sometimes they are the same. So you need to find out what your drift is, and then you adjust your baseline for your drift. And this gives you a new starting point in order to hit the target properly. And shift means how many boards from the baseline that you move to hit the pocket. Say you play this baseline and it goes Brooklyn. Then you're going to make a shift to get the ball back on the New York side of the pocket. Okay? We'll talk more about that in a minute. Now here is the different trajectories created by the shift. As you move to the left, you're still going to be shooting for this area right here, but you're going to again come from different angles like you saw Tommy Jones and Chris Barnes doing on that TV telecast. Now quiet eye is the science we got from the University of Quebec in Canada, where they put actual helmets on golfers and other athletes with miniature cameras, and they track their pupil movement. Okay? And they found out that elite athletes had longer gaze time on their targets, which makes sense. Their eyes didn't wander around as much. They had less extraneous movements when they were targeting. And the funny thing was, amateur athletes thought they were doing the same thing as the pros, but the truth really was quite different. Here's a putting line in the red, and these are lady professional golfers over here, and these are their eye tracks. And here's novice golfers. Look at the difference in how much eye movement there was off the track, off the target line. And they thought they were doing the same thing as the pros. So you have to kind of train and practice this to get your eyes to do the right thing, okay? Other benefits of quiet eyes, like we talked about, it gives you less distractions, so that Troxler effect. It makes things in your periphery fade away, and it gives you more focus without even trying to focus. Now you do this process in every single shot, including your spares. Use this targeting system on everything. So here's how it works. You start with your focal point. In our case, that focal point is going to be the center of the 6-pin. You get in your setup and you look at the center of the 6-pin for 2 seconds. You count in your head 1001, 1002. Count to yourself as you look at that 6-pin right in the center of it. Then you bring your eyes back to the visual target, which in your case will be the arrows. You look at the 9 board, which is 1 board to the right of the second arrow. You spend 2 more seconds looking at the 9 board. And you count in your head 1001, 1002. Okay? Then I suggest taking a breath, as I told you before, letting it out, and then making your move, keeping your eye on the visual target up here at the arrows all the way through your approach like you normally do until the ball passes by it. Okay? So you never look back down at the focal point or the pin. You keep your eye on the visual target up front at the arrows all through your approach just like you normally do. So all we're doing is looking at that focal point for 2 seconds before, and then looking at your target for 2 seconds, and then making your regular approach like you always do with your eyes on your arrow target. Okay? Is that clear? Good. And stop whining and go practice. Let's go practice it.